Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the North West Leicestershire series. There's 31 parishes here based around the towns of Colville and Ashby de la Zouch. Which one are we in today? Welcome back to North West Leicestershire, everybody, and to the biggest village I've done so far here in Leicestershire. This one's going to take me at least an hour to walk around, but you know what? It's full of little nooks and crannies and things that are going to be very interesting to everybody. Welcome to the massive Appleby Magna. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Welcome to Appleby Magna, one of the largest villages and parishes in the North West Leicestershire district. This lies just to the east of the M42 and A42 and includes the small hamlets of Appleby Parva and Little Wigston. Collectively, these settlements are often referred to as just Appleby. The name is exactly what it sounds like, Apple Settlement, suggesting there may well have been a few orchards around here at one time. Historically, Appleby was one of the largest and wealthiest parishes in Leicestershire, a fact reflected by its large church. The parish lies on an ancient boundary between the Kingdom of Mercia and the Danelaw. In fact, that boundary ran right through it, causing some local ethnic divide. Appleby Magna was an Anglo Saxon settlement, but Appleby Parva was Danish and was inhabited by a small group of Normans. No episode about Appleby Magna would be complete without a mention of the most famous family in these parts, the Moores. They had a considerable influence on this part of Leicestershire, and many old buildings here were built by them. Perhaps the most notable would be a school, designed by Sir Christopher Wren and left to the village by the former Lord Mayor of London, Sir John Moore. Appleby has one of the most curious street names in the UK too, Duck Lake, although I can explain that. Come with me and find out what it means. Before we go to Appleby Magna, we first have to tackle Appleby Parva. This is a much smaller settlement, hence the name Parva, which literally means little. This has a collection of houses and this pub called the Appleby Inn Hotel, located on the A444. It's a popular pub, but also a great place to stay if you want to visit Bosworth Battlefield, because that's not far away from here. Appleby Parva doesn't have much more than this pub in terms of landmarks, although it was once much bigger and included a stately home called Appleby Hall. It no longer stands as it was pulled down in the 1920s. It was built in the 1830s and was lived in by the Moore family, who held considerable amounts of land in Appleby Magna between the 16th and the late 19th centuries. By the 1880s, the family's fortunes had sharply declined and they sold the hall in 1919. The last member of the Moore family then moved away to Devon. Our start point in the main village is the end of Black Horse Hill, where it meets Top Street. This is the Black Horse Pub. Timber framed, this dates back to the 16th century. Historical records, though, suggest it was a house sometime before 1789. It sits on top of a shallow hill and a really sharp bend. Of course, these narrow roads were never designed for cars. We continue down Black Horse Hill. At one time, this was an extension of Top Street. Number 1 was formerly a post office. This whole northern area of the village, including Duck Lake, Black Horse Hill and Old End, was originally known as Duck Paddle. It was the most densely populated area of the village, but was often the one singular area most prone to flooding too. You can continue from here to Stony Lane, but my route goes up a path beside this house in your shot now. This wasn't kind to me. As you can see, it's very overgrown and I had to use my GoPro tripod to bash my way through. Hardest footpath in the world to follow, covered in nettles, very tall ones, and now I'm covered almost head to foot in nettle stings, but they'll die off. It's just part of the course walking around a place like this. Briefly onto Morby's Lane, here we have Brook Cottage, which used to be a shop and post office named Morby's Lane Stores. It's called Brook Cottage now thanks to this, the Meadow Brook, around which Appleby was originally built. It runs along a curiously named road called Duck Lake, and no, that's not a misspelling, it's lake, not lane. Historically, Duck Lake meant anywhere along the brook from Rowland's Farm, the name not being confined to one particular road. Crossing the end of Duck Lake is Stony Lane. In Victorian times, this is where one could find a shoemaker, joiner or painter. Next, it's Old End, which has some magnificent buildings. Take for example this timber-framed effort on the end of Stony Lane. By the way, there's a history of clockmaking in Appleby Magna. Duck Lake was the location of the local clockmaker's house. Next is a shortcut which you can take from Old End onto Measham Road, and we're now heading for one of Appleby's newest areas. That would be Steeple View Lane, which is named as such because from here you can see the spire of St Michael's Church. One of the newest streets in Appleby, Steeple View Lane is part of the Oak View development constructed by Mulberry Homes. In the centre of the estate there's a playground, one of 2 that will pass on this route, and it seems to be well used. So that was a nice mix of the old and the new. You had the old end leading towards a brand new part of Appleby Magna. And now we've entered an estate that's full of bungalows, or as Nicky would call them, lungy bows. We're going to walk through these and head towards the church next. Now we're back to Measham Road again, and we're heading south towards Appleby's centrepiece, the church. On the way I came across a parish notice board, so I did the usual honours. 3 down, 28 to go in North West Leicestershire. The church is dedicated to St Michael and All Angels, hence the name of this street, just a few hundred yards away. Between the two, and associated with the Moore family, are the Mrs Moore's almshouses, dating from 1839. Here then is the church. This one is built in the decorated Gothic style, prevalent in the first half of the 14th century. Its churchyard extension over the road contains Appleby's War Memorial. There's 18 names on this one in total. Even though it's dedicated to St Michael now, originally Appleby had a religious building with a different dedication, St Helen. Referred to as the De Appleby or St Helen's Chapel, it still exists as it was incorporated into the northeast section of this very church. That makes it the village's oldest surviving building, and it served as both a private chapel and burial site for the De Appleby family. The church hall opposite was built in 1845. Originally an infant school, behind this is the site of the now demolished Dormers Hall. I have to say, when I drove into Appleby Magna earlier, this was the area that I knew was going to be the best bit. We've had the almshouses, we've had the church, and now we've got one of the pubs coming up. But between here and there, you've got another magnificent house just here. It's full of them, this place. It's lovely. The Crown Inn is the only pub that still remains on Church Street. Historically, it boasted two, this and the Queen Adelaide. Other pubs in the area included the Red Lion, which was on the site of the motorway junction, and the Anchor at Appleby Parva. Church Street has a phone box. In fact, there are two of these in Appleby Magna. Our finishing point later will be the other one. Church Street runs roughly parallel to the Meadow Brook. Along its length, you'll find a wealth of features, both new and old. In fact, you can easily determine both. Halfway down, all the newer builds can be found on the right-hand side of the road. The older buildings once included a bakery and a grocer's shop, and a lovely example of a Leicestershire-style farmhouse. Now we're on Bowleys Lane and we've arrived at a recreation ground, home of Appleby Magna Cricket Club. A friendly village club, Appleby Magna field 2 adult sides who play on Saturday, as well as a midweek youth development team. The cricket field is complemented by a pavilion and by this playground as you enter from the road. Nice area, all things considered. Okay, not much left now. I've been going for about 45 minutes. It will take me about 15 to get back to the car, so my estimate of an hour is pretty much spot on. All we've got to do is follow a footpath which will take us to the road that leads back up to where the car is. And I don't know what's left, to be honest with you. I think it's just generally housing, it's generally residential, but you never know. I've said this before, there could be something that surprises me along the way. One thing which the remainder of the route doesn't pass is arguably Appleby's most historic building, the Sir John Moore School. Located between Magna and Parva, it was originally known as Appleby Grammar School. Built between 1693 and 1697, the school was founded by Lord Mayor and Alderman of London, Sir John Moore, as a gift to his home village. Moore was the second son of Charles Moore, who was the owner of Appleby Parva Manor, which was demolished to create Appleby Hall. Moore had no children and, wishing to use his wealth to benefit his home village, financed the building of a school next to his father's estate. It was designed by Sir Christopher Wren, but the work was undertaken by Sir William Wilson, who studied under Wren at Oxford University. The building still operates primarily as a primary school, but now also hosts many other events, including a midsummer music festival, complete with a firework display. Now you know about the school, that explains the name of this street, Wren Close, which is located nearby. A short footpath at the end of this takes us over the Meadow Brook once again, as we make for Didcot Way. This is a much newer area, one that's been developed within the past few decades, and it's not alone either. St Helens Lane is opposite off Top Street, and this features a reedy pond. This street is named after St Helens Chapel. Top Street is the final leg of our journey. This may be named Top Street now, but it's had a few different names in the past. Centuries ago it was called Over Street, but more recently it's been known as Silver Street. It has some amazing old buildings. Jordan's farmhouse is Appleby's only remaining thatched cottage. At least one other stood until the 1990s, Hall Yard Farmhouse. It was demolished to make way for Garton Close, but the footpath between that and the next building is still called Hall Yard. The next building is Eastgate House, an impressive 3-storey building built according to the lintel over the door in 1720. And lastly is Walker's Hall. This was built in 1650 by David Walker, a descendant of a well-established Appleby Parva family. And here we are back where we began. The Black Horse pub is over there on the corner. And here we have a second red phone box, this one housing a defib machine, and this is on the corner of Snareston Road. Snareston is 2 miles away that way, and I'll see you there next week. Appleby Magna has been a fabulous place to walk around and learn about. Let's see if next week's episode can top it. In Snareston, we'll meet for the first time the Ashby Canal, and not just one but two of its landmark features. I'll see you there in a bit, but for now, it's goodbye from Appleby Magna. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.